Welcome to the OB broadcast episode, I want to say 3. How you been? I'm recording this on Monday, and Tuesday would probably be better for recording because it would be more acoustic, and by more acoustic I mean there'd be less people in the house to give me stage fright. But I cannot record on Tuesday because Tuesday is the 13th, and that is the date that Spyro Remastered comes out, and your boy will be playing Spyro non-stop. And in this scenario, I am, in fact, your boy. Dude, I've been looking forward to Spyro for so long. I've just been looking for just this antiquated type of game, and it's the action-adventure 3D platformer, and they just don't make them anymore. I think the last one that was made was Ukulele, which is sort of like a Banjo-Kazooie love letter, I think I've read it described as. I haven't played it because it looks only just too childish for me, right? But I've just been looking for any game in this genre that's, open and 3D, you're not locked to like two planes, and it's also like an action-adventure, but it's also a platformer. Now, if you lived through like the early 2000s, you would know that there was plenty. You had Jak and Daxter, you had Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, you had Spyro, you had Crash. There was just endless versions of this genre of game. But nowadays, you don't find them anywhere. I've gone to such lengths to find them. And what's worse is I've been looking for them specifically on the Switch because I'm just a massive fan of Nintendo stuff, right? Anything they crap out, I will just buy. And the only situation where I won't is when it comes out on PS4 first, which is the situation of Spyro. But yeah, I've just been looking for something like that I can take on the go with the Switch. I just love the portability of it. And I don't say portability as in like, I can take it on the bus, on a plane, on a train. No, I just mean like from my desk to my bed to the toilet. Not that I've actually ever taken it to the toilet, although I think that is one of the like huge selling points for it. Short of, picking up Zelda. I played Zelda Breath of the Wild, but I played that on the Wii U, so I didn't get the full portable experience of it. Because, turns out it's actually on the Wii U too, I didn't realize. But I played that, and I've played Odyssey, and that's really about it for that genre, for the library. The Switch has a criminally small library, I've noticed. It's just tiny. One of the things I did want to talk about is one of the games on it that I've recently been playing. I've been playing Dead Cells, and that is a really interesting game because I'm pretty sure it's great, but I don't know if I love it yet. And I've got a thing for roguelites. Specifically for the Switch, I've been looking for games that have just heaps and heaps of replayability, and so roguelites just are that genre. The only game really that's got me to play through multiple times that isn't a roguelite has either been Pokemon, which you could maybe describe as a roguelite, almost. Probably not, but you could. And Mario Odyssey. I'm on my third save file of that because it's just, really fun game for, completionists and also for platforming. But yeah, I picked up Dead Cells, and the preamble to that is I've been playing The Binding of Isaac on the Switch, and I used to have it on PC way before like Afterbirth came out back in Rebirth days, and you know what, I was pretty good at it. I managed to get like most of the achievements done without just holding R to reset until you got a good run, but there was a few things that I never ended up finishing up, and I won't lie, there was one or two things that I cheated to get, mostly the character that had no survivability at all. This was before the Lost God Holy Mantle, and also trying to get Super Meat Boy unlocked because that was just unfairly difficult. But yeah, now that I'm playing on Switch, I know it is a few updates behind, but there's no possibility to cheat. So it's really been like a mind over matter thing. And I've finished The Binding of Isaac up to the update it's at almost. I just got to finish off doing 30 dailies, which I could have done ages ago, but dailies are boring. And I don't even have to complete them. I just have to partake in 30. I just haven't done it yet. So I'm slowly whittling away those, waiting for the update, and then I'll be done. Some of those runs are just ridiculous. Trying to do ultra hard. If you've never played Isaac, you're probably going to be lost for a minute because I'm only going to talk about it for a minute. But ultra hard and, ultra greedier with the Lost or like Mega Satan with the Keeper. Oh man, just some of those are unbearably difficult. But no, I finally finished that, and so preamble is now over. In finishing Binding of Isaac, or near enough to the point where I'm happy picking up a new game, I decided to get Dead Cells because I like roguelites. And Dead Cells has made me decide I no longer like roguelites. No, it's a great game, but it's got two aspects that have really not turned me off, but just put me down a different path of games. There's a really large focus on time-based stuff, and another large focus on difficulty. So the first thing to note is that there are various areas in the game that you can only access by speeding through and getting there within a certain time limit. And obviously, I'm only a few hours in. And by a few, I mean like 20, maybe 30-ish. But I'm still fairly new. I've barely got anything unlocked. I'm, in terms of like completion of collecting items, I'm like maybe 15-20%. Still very early days. Don't have a lot of the permanent upgrades fully completed. But there is a lot of focus on trying to get through things quickly. I'm not a really big fan of that. I really like taking my time. And it's especially painful in this game where taking your time is actually, well, from what I can tell, a somewhat valid strategy, in the sense that if you go through and kill all the enemies, you're going to get good stuff. And I don't know yet if the stuff that you would get, so if anyone that's played it, Scrolls of Power and the various upgrades, I don't know if playing through slowly and completely clearing a map would equate to the same level of stuff you would get from getting to these time-locked rooms. So I really don't know what the meta is. The only thing I do know about the meta is that ice is broken. It's just ridiculous, you know? Waterbending is best bending, again. As it turns out, being able to freeze a dude in place and then just go to town, damaging him, is pretty good. I don't know how ice stacks up in like other games with heaps of status effects, like MMOs. I've never really played like a WoW type of game. I don't even know if they have effects like that, but you know, you got poison that is a dot damage over time, and you got fire, which is sort of like a stun. This is in just games in general. But ice, being able to freeze enemies, especially in a game where you're either fighting, you know, one boss at a time or a few small enemies that you can sort of kite away from each other to take on one at one, it's pretty useful. It's insanely useful. I still can't tell if I like so you have 2 weapons, 2 like grenades / bombs, and I can't tell if I like having the freeze bow and then 2 deployable turrets that shoot crossbows, or having like because there's the freeze bombs, there's freeze arrows, and it's like a palm, like Kamehameha, frost at your hand. And I don't know, I guess it depends on the run and what items you're picking up. But my loadouts that I try and shoot for, because obviously it's all procedurally generated because it's a roguelite, obviously. The way that I've been doing it mostly is having a sword, and a quick sword, not a slow sword, because I just can't deal with a slow sword. So either like a pair of swords, dual swords, or something quick and slashy, and then preferentially some type of bow or the frost blast, and then 2 deployable minigun turrets that shoot crossbows, or one of them being a ice grenade. And I think I've stumbled across what is considered to be sorta more top tier stuff. To be honest, I didn't even pick up the deployable turrets. I just carried around 2 ice grenades until I saw the speedrunner. I watched like the first 2 minutes of the world record for a speedrun, and he picked up 2 deployable turrets, and I said, oh, well, I guess that's what the meta is. But no, I mean, having used it now, it does some pretty great damage. But yeah, I'm not too fond of the whole timed aspect, and I'm also not so fond of difficulty. And difficulty in games is fine, but and again, I have not even unlocked it yet, so I could be wrong. But to the best of my knowledge, the more times you beat the final boss, you can unlock things that augment the game to make it more difficult. And I don't know yet, because I haven't got to it, like I said. I don't know yet if that's going to seem like an artificial way to increase longevity in the game, or if it's an actual valid, fun difficulty thing. But I think I want to just buy more games that are like Spyro. I've played a lot of games that are difficult and enjoyably difficult. A lot of the Dark Souls games, Neo, especially for someone that, like me, that's not particularly good at those games. Finishing Dark Souls, finishing Bloodborne, getting through most of Neo, not getting all the trophies, but they're difficult, but they're fun. And I don't know necessarily how well that translates into a roguelite. And obviously, it's had great success, but like for me personally. Because another one is Wizard of Legend, which is another roguelite, except it's all like wizards and superpowers. And it's brilliant because all the powers are really reminiscent of Avatar The Last Airbender. And your boy is the biggest fan of Avatar The Last Airbender. So immediately that was a goer for me. But unlike The Binding of Isaac, and I think this is where Isaac really differentiates itself from other roguelites. In Dead Cells and in Wizard of Legend, you have like 5 or 6 core bosses and then the final boss, right? And then with Isaac, you just got heaps and heaps. There's like 40 different bosses that you could fight. And you end up seeing, a couple more so than the rest. But when you're playing Dead Cells, you got the conjunctivitis eye or the concierge, and then the timekeeper, and then the final boss, right? And that's it. And I know there's like elites, which are sort of common enemies but more difficult. But it's just it's a little repetitive, fighting the same bosses over and over. And I think that's one of the complaints that Flint Hook gets. Not that I've ever played, I've just seen a couple of reviews. Because it looked kind of interesting, but I never ended up picking it up. And Wizard of Legend's a bit the same. There's, I think there's like 6 or 7 floors, and you fight 2 bosses, and then a final boss for the area. So like for the earth, fire, and ice area. And so there's the 3 champions, final boss, and then you fight 2 random bosses that you can fight either like at the beginning or at the end, like the archer and the knight. And I don't know, with those sorts of games, when there's like a finite amount of bosses, I find them more repetitive inherently. And I think that's why Isaac has so much replayability. Mind you, that's like a widely successful game. I think it's like, done really well for itself financially. So I guess they've got a big enough team and enough people that they can afford to have heaps and heaps of bosses. I've not even scratched the surface of weapon types in Dead Cells though. And there seems to be a really good variety. I've only just started unlocking the 2 or 3 different type of shoe weapons, which in a game with heaps of like swords and bows and arrows, it's kind of interesting to see like a shoe weapon where you sort of just kick dudes. The other thing this game does is it has a system of weapon characteristics, and I think it's like fairly common in games like Diablo. I'm not sure because I've never played that game, but I know there's this like whole genre of games where you get an item and then you get the same items but with different stats, and it's all about min-maxing, and you can re-roll the stats on your current weapon, and it's got that whole aspect to it, which is fine. I still don't know how I feel about it. I think inherently I dislike it. I dislike being able to have, you've got 2 swords that one has slightly higher damage, but the other one, inflicts burn when you hit. And so you're calculating DPS and you're looking at all the stats and you're re-rolling stats, and then you lose one stat that you like, but you got a new one that's even better, but it's got a, negative health aspect to it, or it's got, you take more damage. I don't know, maybe I'm old-fashioned or maybe I'm boring, but I sort of just like this is the upgraded weapon. This is the better version, right? You had the old one, now you got the new one is better. Or you have a weapon and then you upgrade it, and all the different weapons roughly get to similar levels of skill and power, but you can sort of choose. Whereas this, it feels like, because of this reroll system and the way that everything's dropped, you sometimes, if you're wanting to maximize your run and you're picking up the colorless items, which are like drop from bosses, are inherently better. If he drops a weapon that you don't like a big old hammer or a big old sword, you're sort of just stuck with it, because colorless, from what I understand, just outclass the other ones, because usually they have better stats and they scale off whichever stat is highest for you. And there's 3 stats: there's brutality, tactics, survival. And you sort of want to stack them for specific builds, and colorless just goes off whatever's highest. I gotta say, the music in Dead Cells doesn't really grab me. The first couple of times you hear it, you go, oh yeah, it's kind of cool. And you listen to it and it's like, yeah, this fits thematically, right? I'm playing this game. It's got this real gritty prison art style to it, and the music fits. But the more you play it, it just sort of gets repetitive. I don't know, when I was like Mario Odyssey, for example, I never got sick of the music of that, right? The Wooded Kingdom has like one of the best tracks in the whole game. And every time you go back there, you're happy to listen to it. Whereas Dead Cells, for me, is one of those games where you plug in your headphones, you listen to some YouTube or a podcast or an audiobook or the radio, and you just play at the same time. So music is not the strongest point of the game. It's definitely fun. I think the more you play it, the more you understand and the better you get, and that makes it more enjoyable. I just haven't reached that point where everything really, really makes sense and I understand what I'm doing and I'm consistently getting to the final boss, even if I'm not beating the final boss, just getting there or getting near there. And I'm close. And I feel like it's maybe a bit foolhardy to try and talk about a game on a podcast you haven't completed or beat the final boss of yet, even though that's like a negligible thing. You beat the final boss in Isaac a myriad times. But it is a good, enjoyable game. I would be interested to see, because the other thing I was considering picking up at the same time is Enter the Gungeon, which is like a bullet hell roguelite, where everything's sort of got this like a gun art style, where even the enemies are like bullets and shells. And that's another widely received game. I feel like people that have Isaac are also people that are going to like Gungeon. And to some degree, I imagine, are also going to like Dead Cells. Hey, this is a post-podcast Brandon. I just wanted to add one thing. I forgot to mention in Dead Cells, and sorry if this sounds slightly slightly more echoey. I haven't quite got the same setup because I was mid-pack up. But I really wanted to include the fact that when you're playing Dead Cells, you feel so good. The movement is great. Once you start unlocking runes, which are like permanent upgrades to yourself, your character, once you start unlocking them, and you have a little more practice with the mobility and the movement of the game, it feels so good moving through the game. I can only liken it to Spider-Man, and I hate to harken back to that, but it feels like Spider-Man, because when you're swinging through the city, you feel great. You feel like Spider-Man swinging through the city. Same thing goes with this. When you are, jumping from wall to wall, and then you fall through a platform and crush an enemy, and then throw a grenade and snipe them with a bow, everything feels really great. The controls are really nice and tight, the roll and the jump, it all feels, so fluid. And I think that's really important in games. And I'm sure I've said this before, but you can have like a great game with a great story, but if you don't have really nice controls, it's going to ruin, or at least dampen your experience. That's not the case for this. Like I said, crawling and jumping between walls, it feels really good, feels really responsive, like Spider-Man, like Mario Odyssey, it just feels great. So, hey, me, try and slot this in somewhere where it's relevant. Color is, interestingly, like one of the best utilized things in Dead Cells. Like, they're so good at using color. Each area, is vibrant in its own way. Right, you've like got these really bright greens for the toxic sewers, and the ossuary and the sepulchre. I just don't know the names of the areas yet, but they have these like real rich red colors, and they're just so vibrant, to use the same word again. Every area feels different, and that's partly due to the enemies, but largely due to the color. Every area feels different in its own way. Some of the later levels, when you're getting high up in this clock tower, you've just got this like really nice reds and purples that are just, simulating higher up sunset sky colors. It really looks brilliant. So that's largely what I wanted to say about Dead Cells. In the past, so with Spider-Man, I had written out notes and just bullet points of different areas I wanted to talk about. And with Dead Cells, I sort of just wrote the word Dead Cells, and have been going from there. So I'm just trying to see which flows better, which feels more natural, and comparing the pair and seeing what turns out better. So onto Spider-Man. No, I'm not going to talk about Spider-Man again. Although the DLC is coming out soon, so I will talk about that obviously. And hey, turns out Spider-Man is my favorite superhero. I'm only going to talk about this for a second because I've never been like a super into superheroes, but I'm pretty sure Spider-Man was my favorite. In the past, it was like maybe it's Jessica Jones, but sort of not really. But no, it's definitely Spider-Man now, and that's largely due to the game, but also reading a lot of comic book stuff. Not the actual comic books. I'm not a nerd, but just reading about them. On to callbacks to previous podcasts. I recently talked about getting glasses. I think in the most recent one, and interestingly enough, the Optometrist, Forest Lakes Optometrists, I think, they called me back. They just called me up and said, hey, just checking in, making sure the glasses are all good. And I said, yeah, dude, thanks for calling. I had a couple of questions. They answered swiftly. And you know what? I feel like I don't know if it's common for places like this to call up and just check in on you, but they did. And I've had services that don't do that. And it just looks better because it doesn't take a lot to just call up. The phone call was literally 2 minutes. And they said, hey, we're just calling in to check on how you're doing with your new glasses, if you're having any problems, what would you like to ask. And it was a very short conversation, but it just showed that they cared and they followed it up. And look, I can objectively say that it's not a difficult thing to call up and, feign interest and make sure everyone's going okay with the new glasses. But it just showed that they cared, or at least they had a good team, knowing that that's a good way to look good. Another callback that I wanted to do, because I was talking about cooking recently, and I said you can't screw up anything that you have a recipe for. I have to amend that because I was doing some cooking and I screwed it up. So I was making a pecan pie. I never made a pecan pie. In fact, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think I've ever tasted pecan pie. But my dad had, and he's a big fan of it. So I said, screw it, I'll find a recipe and we'll just go for it. Did not turn out great. Firstly, I had to redo my pastry because I didn't know how to make pastry. Turns out, following instructions is not necessarily, and I know this is controversial because I said the opposite, but maybe following written down instructions isn't just the cure-all to making food. So my pastry was dry and flaky and crumbly, and so I had to make another lot, and even that, with an amended recipe, still was not perfect. And what I ended up doing was somehow managing to get it flat enough to cover the base of the flan, and then using the offcuts to build up the walls, which did turn out okay. It didn't fall apart, but yeah, the pastry is undercooked. Even though I blind baked it for more than the time it was recommended, I still somehow undercooked it. The other thing was I was following the recipe and it said to use softened butter for the mix of maple syrup and sugar and vanilla essence to make the base or the inside filling of the pecan pie. And I used softened butter, which is exactly what the recipe called for. It was super soft to the touch. However, when I was mixing it all together, it just did not melt in. It did not absorb and become all one mixture. And as a result, I had these lumpy bits of butter. And when it was cooking, it just had this really gross buttery layer at the top. My mum's made them before, and she wasn't a big fan of the pecan pie, which is fine. I'd never made it before. I didn't do a great job. Dad seemed to like it, but he could have been faking it, really. But I did my best, and I have to amend what I said. So, still a big call, but I don't think you can screw up anything you have a recipe and a video tutorial for. I think if you have a video tutorial and you're watching someone cook it in front of you, that I don't think you can screw up. Clearly, if you just have words on a piece of paper, you can screw it up. You might not know how to roll the dough properly or the pastry, or you might use soft butter and not melted butter, which, by the way, if something ever says softened butter, I'm just using melted butter. You know what? If someone knows why you would use softened instead of melted, hey, Miguel, maybe you know why you would use softened instead of melted, please tell me, because the only thing I can think of is if you want that gross buttery layer at the top. So yeah, I screwed up. I had to fix what I said. It still wasn't too bad. The filling, the buttery layer on the top, and the base of the pastry. I was surprised, however, that the pastry actually held together because, like I said, I had the bottom bit and then I had to use separate dough that was off-cut to build up the walls around it, and it just looked like Frankenstein's monster. It just looked bad. And the worst bit is I watched heaps and heaps of like video tutorials on people doing it after the fact, which is just not the right way of doing it. Really, I should have watched before I did it. So yeah, I've been trying to cook something every week, every Sunday at least, but once a week I've been trying to cook a new dessert type dish. And this week we're going to try and do something a little more basic because apparently pecan pie, is widely known from what I understand that working with pastry is not the easiest thing in the world. In saying that, I do want to do more of it because I sort of need the practice. In saying that, though, I might end up just doing cookies this weekend because I need a bit of a break. Also, I'm pretty sure cookies you don't have to babysit them and are quick and easy to do, and I got a lot of time booked for playing Spyro. Spyro is just a quick segue because I'm sure I'll be talking about it fully in an upcoming podcast, but apparently you only get... So the disc only has the first game on it, and the second two are DLC, so you have to download them, which is not great because my PlayStation does not have the most room on it, and I don't have a lot of games I'm willing to delete and make room for. So a bit of a shame, especially since I don't think I'm pretty sure Crash didn't do that when it was previously released by the same people, I want to say. So we will see. I'm pretty sure that is like confirmed, but we'll, like I said, wait and see. I am super keen for Spyro though. I wanted to bring more music into the podcast. I don't know, maybe it's coming from the whole radio background, but I wanted to... I like the way I had the Eminem album in one of the previous episodes, where I sort of just took it song by song and briefly talked about it. And wanted to do it about this album, XInfinity by Watsky. Now, if you don't know Watsky, he is a rapper from the Cali area, I think, California, and he was a real talented poet before he even got into rap, which is why he's so talented in his songwriting. Because not only can he rap really, really fast, but he's also got the lyrical knowledge and the way to put together words from the poetry background to make everything not only great to listen to, but then also have all these, subverted meanings and hidden messages that you only really get to hear and appreciate once you've listened to it a couple of times and then go, oh, that's what it's about. I have the entire album in front of me, and we're going to go through it. And the thing that's interesting to note about this song is that, this album rather, is that some albums, they flow into each other, but Watsky's literally flow into each other because, the tail end of one song will be like the intro of the next. So if you were to listen to it just straight from start to finish, it would literally flow as if it was one long song. So first up, we've got Tiny Glowing Screens Part 3. Now, I think about Watsky is that he, like Spose, another rapper I'm a big fan of, has lots of callbacks to previous songs, and Tiny Glowing Screens is quite literally the third part of a trilogy of songs. So you've got Tiny Glowing Screens Part 1 and 2, which were sort of just a mellow song, and then like a very spoken word poetry type song. And then you've got Tiny Glowing Screens Part... Let's try that again. Tiny Glowing Screens Part 3, which is just an incredibly upbeat, absolute banger of a song. Oh, I just got a text. EB Games. Hi, Brandon. Your Spyro Reignited Trilogy Special Edition is out tomorrow. Head down to EB Games from 8 a.m. I have pre-ordered it. You shouldn't pre-order. There are very few things that I pre-order. One of them is Pokemon games, and believe me, after Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, I won't be pre-ordering them anymore. And the other is Spyro. I've decided to pre-order that because I'm a loser and I wanted the tin, the steel bookcase, and some of the little like little art pieces and keyring that is just going to go into a shelf or a drawer somewhere and never be used again. But I'm an idiot who likes cheap plastic crap. So I did pre-order that. But it was one of the... You shouldn't pre-order a game, I think, unless you know exactly what it's going to be like and exactly what it's going to entail. Because pre-ordering is one of those things... Oh, God, I'm so off topic. But pre-ordering is one of those things where, a company can be like, yeah, we'll advertise a game and then not fully deliver on that promise and then make money because people have pre-ordered it. Spyro, I'm almost positive, is not the case. Mind you, if it is, you will be hearing about it, regardless of whether or not you like it. And then you can opt out of getting these text messages. But no thank you, because text messages from EB Games are the only text messages I get from anyone. Not even Domino's calls anymore. Anyway, wow. Tiny Glowing Screens Part 3, it's an absolute banger of a song. It's probably one of the best on the album. And again, this is similar to the Dead Cells thing. I've not got any notes. I'm just going through, trying to have a stream of conscious off the top of the head and see how it goes. And next is Talking to Myself. Talking to Myself is more of like a mellow song. And lyrically, it's definitely up there. I don't think it's my favourite, but it's, the thing about Watsky is that when everything is so good, like all of his music is so good, the ones that really like aren't up to par or aren't quite your favourite for one reason or another end up looking really bad in comparison. And it's not because they're bad songs, it's just because, well, you listen to Tiny Glowing Screens Part 3 and it's like an absolute banger. And then you go to Talking to Myself, which is by no stretch of the imagination a bad song. It's actually really, really great. The music video is really strange. Watsky's music videos, a lot of them, as a rule, are kind of strange and art house. But Talking to Myself, regardless of what I was fumbling about saying, is actually a really good song. It's mellow. Lyrically, it's great. It's very reminiscent of... the chorus is reminiscent of Round the Twist, which is an Australian TV show. It's a really weird show where a kid swallows a fish in one episode, and then the fish swims down to his junk, and then he's able to swim fast because the fish is turning him into a propeller. That's not a joke. That's a real thing that happens. Australian TV is just that, I guess. But yeah, the chorus of that is very reminiscent to Round the Twist. But the verses have like a really good combination of like lyrical gymnastics, which is what he refers to when he's talking about like the really fast stuff, and also being like soft, mellow, emotional type stuff. It's a great track. The third one is Chemical Angel, and it's again one of the more upbeat ones. And for me, for whatever reason, Chemical Angel just always gets forgotten. I don't know why. I don't dislike this song. It's upbeat. Generally speaking, I prefer the upbeat ones. It talks a bit about his life, from my understanding, because Watsky's had issues with epilepsy, and he's talked about that throughout his music, unless, of course, that's all just part of his, stage persona. But in previous songs, he's talked about epilepsy, and in this one, he's talking about, pills and, things that help normalize life, right, in the context. If I'm just trying to I don't want to actually pull up the lyrics, but it does refer to something like, I got a capsule full of friends. My doctor says I'm being reckless, implying that like not taking them is a bad decision, being reckless. Unless I'm, completely misinterpreting the song. But hey, that's just part of the music, right? But no, Chemical Angel is a really good song, although for whatever reason, it just seems to fall off of my radar whenever I'm listing music that I like from this album. Don't sleep on it though. It's a good song. Next up, we've got A Little Slice, which is, again, one of the ones that for me just never gets remembered because all of the other ones are so great. You hear A Little Slice and it just sort of falls by the wayside. It's got the beat itself has got this like really cool retro, almost surfer vibe to it. Whenever I hear it, I'm just thinking of like, sunset on the beach. I don't know if that's just because of the whole California vibe he's got going on, or maybe it's the way he's edited his vocals in the song. But again, kind of upbeat, There are definitely parts in the song that are quite fast lyrically, and it's got a good balance of that and just, audible stuff. I think it's reverb. Watsky uses it in a lot of his songs, and once once it clicked in my head, I heard it in his music and other rappers that they use this sort of reverb quite a lot. I don't know if it's something I necessarily dislike, but it's definitely something to consider when you're listening. I don't know how well you're going to like a live performance if you've grown accustomed to this reverb that a lot of rappers use. Like, I know Spose in particular doesn't use it as much as Watsky, but there are times when I'm listening to his song, it's like, oh, there's that sort of reverb style that Watsky uses in Spose's music. Again, I'm not 100% sure that reverb is the correct terminology for what I'm thinking of, but it's sort of like you have one solo vocal track, and then for like 2 or 3 words at the end of a line, it's like they've doubled up the vocal track and you can hear it sort of echoed, but not really. And I do think that is reverb, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, Little Slice has a bit more than a little of it. And again, it's one of the ones that just falls by the wayside because all of the other songs are better. Then you've got Springtime in New York, and Springtime in New York is sort of this slam poetry, spoken word type of song. And I'll be honest with you, I skip this every time. It's not that interesting lyrically, for me at least. The thing with Watsky is that he sort of blends like singing and rap, and he's doing that more and more as his music progresses. But Springtime in New York is just very like dry and bland. There's nothing that really hooks you, or hooks me at least, and reels you in terms of his music. Unlike Pink Lemonade, which is the song after that. Pink Lemonade is a great song. It's probably, again, one of my favorites on the album. It's got heaps of hidden meaning to it, like all of the lyrics that you only really start to pick up the more you listen to, because he raps in parts really, really fast where you can't actually pick up on it. Pink Lemonade really feels like the track on the album that he's allocated to have the most, not double entendre, but just hidden meanings and like double meanings in what he's saying, and like bars. Why did you say it like that? No, it's got like the most bars. Like whenever I think of it, like this song, it just reminds me of Spose. Like, as he's so good for having like creative lines where he'll like, my favorite is we're all set like tables in a restaurant, right? All set tables in a restaurant. And it's just funny to me, but it's also songwriting, right? And he's really, really good at it. And I've only given you one example. You're going to have to take my word until I start talking about a Spose album. But this really feels like the song on the album for Watsky that he allocates that much to. Don't Be Nice, next track. This one is far more upbeat and far more like speedy in terms of his rapping than Pink Lemonade, which is fine. I personally prefer the fast stuff, but it's not for everyone. Don't Be Nice is, again, similar to Pink Lemonade, where it's got lots of double meaning and underlying imagery. I'll just, cut out the 10 minutes I spent to try and figure out the word for imagery, and imagery wasn't even the one that I wanted. But it's got heaps of underlying imagery in what he's saying lyrically. Imagery in a song, you try and figure it out. Then you get into Yes, Britannia, and that's more of a softer song. He's really good at sort of blending an album with these like real headbanging upbeat songs, and then these, really almost peaceful, soft ones, right? And Yes, Britannia is one of those. It just starts off really quiet. And again, while it's soft and peaceful is probably not the right word, but it's more low-key, it still has like him rapping in it that he really brings the bars to it. Watsky's really good at being consistent in his music, I've found. Like, there's never really a time when you're listening to a song in an album from Watsky and you go, oh man, that was just, where did that come from? Why did you include that track? And I guess that's evident in considering how long he actually takes to to release albums. Because I feel like, does take a lot longer than, say, other rappers would. Some release every year, some every couple of months, some every month. But Watsky really takes his time because he really wants to make sure what he's putting out is good and a good representation of him and his art, and he wants to be proud of it. And you can do that and still do it, every couple of months. but he really, really takes his time. And that's evident in Yes Britannia, because again, it's one of those softer songs, and it starts off really, really quiet and then builds up. It's got a lot of like, I don't want to say peaceful instruments, but there's no like heavy, guitar and drum. It's a lot softer. But again, he still brings it when he's actually rapping. Again, it's not one that I actually play a whole heck of a lot. Like, a whole heck of a lot. Wow, okay. No, I don't play it that much. And it's not because I dislike it. I think I just, generally when I feel like listening to rap and I feel like listening to Watsky, it's more of those upbeat, Don't Be Nice, Tiny Glowing Screens Part 3. Those are the ones that I go for. I'll listen to it when I just am shuffling through, like I'm feeling like it's a Watsky day. I'm just going to shuffle through his music. I'll happily listen to Yes Britannia then. One of, I think, Love Letters, the next song, might actually be my favorite. It's really, really cool because at the end of the second verse, he lists a whole bunch of his, rap inspirations, like really, really quickly. And it's cool. I always am a fan of when rappers talk about their inspirations, whether it's, bigger than them or smaller than them. I think it's just important because you get to see, I can understand how, Charlie Tuna and Eminem influenced Watsky in this way. For whatever reason, and I've got no real reason for thinking this, but like for whatever reason, I feel like this is the one that he took the most time writing, Love Letters. And again, I have no reason to think that. I've got no evidence, and nothing in the song suggests it, but it just flows really, really well. Each line flows into the next perfectly. I'm just such a massive fan of this song. I always find myself going back to it. It's just so engaging. This is one of the ones that when I first listened to the album back in 2016 when it came out, this was one that I played on repeat. Whenever, if you're like me and you listen to albums at a time, not songs at a time, there are ones you inherently go back to, right? For Eminem, Kamikaze, it was The Ringer. This is how insane I am. I was in the middle of saying songs that are on the album that you just repeat inherently. I heard a door close, and I had to stop immediately and make sure no one was home. And the people I live with know, I've been doing radio stuff for like years, so this is not abnormal, me talking into a microphone. For whatever reason, I'm so paranoid about someone standing outside my room listening to me do this, and I don't know why. Because I have a radio show that goes live onto not only just the airwaves, but also streams through the website just to the wider internet. And I also put this on the internet where anybody can access it. So why? Why do I care if someone is outside listening? Or even inside the house, not listening, just doing paperwork in another room or watching TV. I'm so paranoid. I've got such stage fright of doing a podcast in my room when anyone else is around. I will sometimes not do this when other people are sleeping. That one's more for obvious reasons of not trying to wake people up. But that's how insane I am. And I could easily like cut this out because it's whatever, doesn't paint me in a good light. But it's the honest truth, and I don't know why I would admit the fact. I don't know. Maybe someone else out there has a similar thing that they do that is just insane, but they do anyway. Right, so we were saying that there are songs on albums that you just inherently repeat. For me, on this album of Watsky's XInfinity, it is Love Letters. In the past, it's been The Ringer for Eminem, for Kamikaze. So there are songs that inherently just have more replayable value than others. And I don't think that's limited to one song in particular. I think it's all personal preference. And for me, that one was Love Letters. It's a great song, really, really bangs. Rivals Tiny Glowing Screens Part 3, which is, a great song on its own and also as part of the trilogy. So, next up, we got Stick to Your Guns. Now, Stick to Your Guns is weird for me. Not because of the song itself, but because it's really political. In particular, it's political regarding, like, gun laws, as you might imagine. Now, I live in Australia. It's weird. So I live in Australia where gun laws are like great because like nobody really gets shot, and that's awesome. But so I don't have any real opinions on whether or not guns should be restricted because I got no understanding, right? I don't understand how hard or easy it is to get a gun. I don't know, like, anyone that's been affected by it. The only thing that I can say is that in Australia, there were guns, right? And 28th of April 1996, it was the Port Arthur massacre, in which one guy in Tasmania went and shot a lot of people with, I believe, a semi-automatic rifle. And, oh, I'm getting a phone call from an unknown number. Okay, so I don't know where I was. I got interrupted by a phone call, which hope to God that I remember to cut out. That we were talking about stick to your guns. Now, again, as I was saying, in Tasmania, 28th of April 1996, in Port Arthur, someone went through and shot a bunch of people with, I believe, a semi-automatic rifle. And the only connection I have to gun laws in any capacity is that that date was the day that I was born, right? So, and that's not even a real major connection. So that's the extent of guns in my purview in Australia. So it's difficult for me to really talk about Stick to Your Guns as a song because there are like social implications that are just not relevant to me. In saying that, we do hear a lot about the, shootings that go on, and I think that's relevant. He's talking in the song, obviously it's, he talks about guns as if it's like, the whole song is almost like this. Hey, this is the news. Catch up with this is the shooter, and this is what they were like in primary school, and that sort of right. That's sort of the tone they're taking, and it's obviously a anti-gun song, or rather, tighten up the gun laws song. And I look, I'm really not going to go into it because I've got no place commenting on it because I'm just so far removed from it. We will get into Brave New World. Brave New World is the most interesting song because it's really sexual in nature, and that's fine. It's interesting. He released the music video for it not on YouTube where you would release music videos, but on a porn website, and that was because it was again sexual in nature, and it talks a lot about social conditioning and whether what you know to be right in terms of like relationships and that sort, whether what you know to be right is really what is right, like objectively. And there's a lot about him talking about, what if I was with a dude? What's would that be wrong? Is that bad? Should I try it? Should I not? I haven't really listened to it too much because it's just, as a song itself, like it's not super catchy. But there are definitely implications in the lyrics that are interesting. Watsky does nothing if he doesn't, push the box and push the envelope on music. It was a really, really interesting change and direction for him to take his music. I don't know, like I haven't really looked at the individual sales of songs, so maybe that song did really well, but I don't know, wasn't for me. Oh, you're an idiot. Okay, so everything I just said was about going down as a song. Right, no, that's my bad. So just everything you just heard, I was describing Going Down, which is the song that was released, the music video on an adult website. Brave New World is a completely different song. Brave New World is... okay. Brave New World is similar to almost all of the Watsky songs because it's upbeat, it's got fast rapping, and it's engaging. And while that is great, because it's like, top 5 on the album for me, it makes it very indistinguishable. And that is evidenced by the fact that I was just talking about it as if it was a different song for the past, 5 minutes. So, yeah, Brave New World, really engaging. It's a great listen. If you have a shuffle playlist full of, upbeat rap that you sort of just like to, kick back and listen to some fast rapping, this is a great addition, but it's not necessarily memorable. In saying that, it doesn't make it bad. Lyrically, it's really well written. That's kind of the running theme. But yeah, again, I could not have planned it better that Brand New World was a not memorable song and then completely confused it with another one. I I think I covered Going Down well enough while I thought it was Brave New World. Next up is Midnight Heart. Midnight Heart is another different song by Watsky. And I say different because you listen to the verses and it's like, oh, it's upbeat, it bangs, it's got this real like hard verses and lines, and you listen to it, and if you like that sort of rap, that's great. But then you have the chorus and it just completely shifts. And honestly, I think it is to the detriment of the song. I'm not like some music scholar, so like I don't know why everything is done for what reason to give what, feeling or emotion. But for me, as just like you, just the average song listener, I felt like having this like really soft piano, a chorus, really took away from like how great the verses were, which is a shame because the verses are pretty great. It's also got like a really strange like boxing music video. I don't know. I watched a lot of the music videos for this album in particular. I'm not sure why, but yeah, it was like a real strange one. And then we start to get to some of the better. Well, no, not better, but some of the songs at the tail end of the album flow into each other better, and this is where it really starts. So it starts with Conversations, which is like honestly, if you have a good relationship with your dad, this is a great song because it's really about his relationship with his dad and by extension his parents. But throughout the song, you sort of get an idea of what he was. Okay, I was trying to say what Watsky was like as a child, but it just didn't come out. But what Watsky was like as a child, and then as the song progresses, he gets older and older, and then his parents get older and older, and all the different verses are different conversations, as the name might imply. So the first one is dealing with death and the afterlife, and then by the end of the song, so to clarify, the first verse is a young Watsky trying to understand death and the afterlife. And then not only does he mature and does everyone in the song, himself and his family, get older throughout the song, but when he gets to the end, they're talking about his parents, getting to that age where they're going to have to start thinking about, death and wills and that sort of thing. So not only do the people mature as the song does, but also it's got this cyclical nature where it starts where it finishes and it finishes where it starts. It's actually a beautiful song. It's one that I try and play. So I sneak it into the playlist whenever I'm hanging out with my dad, just because it's really nice. Now, the next song is Knots. Now, Knots is, in particular, very good lyrically at, saying one thing and then meaning another. And there's this whole section where this song is about this character, Arthur, who, from the best of my knowledge, because I'm not like a history dude, I didn't do history in school, but from the best of my knowledge, was like a Jew in World War II. And like that's sort of the setting of this character. And I say character, it could very well be like an ancestor of his or a relative of his in the past. I don't know. But there's this point in the song where he's talking about, bending into like letters, bending a rope into letters. And it's just like a very elegant way of describing this character tying a noose. And while it's, quite dark and somber, remember the whole Holocaust thing is the backdrop for the song, so I think. And the other thing is that it's just really elegant, the way he describes it. You know what? I am actually going to pull up the lyrics because I think it would benefit. It's also got this really nice piano going in the background, which is not always great for rap, but for this it works really well. And again, this one this doesn't have much like singing rap. It's all like really, really spoken word. Okay, here we go. To go retrieve the length of cable hidden in the cabinet, to metamorphosize a twisted row into an alphabet, to lay the lazy C upon the shabby wooden floor to rest, to send the end across the top and bend the C into an S. To curve the tail beneath the S and turn the tangle to a B, to hug the wretched root around the fibers suffocatingly, to wrap again, to give the coil 7 loops, to penetrate the yawning hoop, to tug the loose appendage through, to yank the knot until it's ready for the job it's got to do, to toss the braid above the ceiling beam and to affix the noose, to bid adieu to all of you until there's nothing left to do but climb the chair, to cinch the collar, find the edge, to step into the air. I'm sorry, I did that bad. I can't rap. I'm just reading lyrics. But all of that, he's talking about, the lazy C. Lay the lazy C on the wooden floor, and then you you take the top of the C and you bend it into an S and then into a B, and then you're like changing this rope from different letters into a noose, right? And it's really, really dark, but it's, beautifully written. You'll be happy to know that the next song on the album is not so dark, because the title is Knots. Oh, sorry, that was Knots. So the next song is Roses, right? And these few songs, it goes Knots, Roses, and then Theories. I'm not I'm not a music scholar, so I'm just going to try and do my best to interpret it in some capacity, and then maybe you can listen for yourself and tell me what you think. But from listening, Knots is talking about the suicide of this guy, right? And spoilers, this song, Roses, and the next song, Theories, Theories talks about him stepping off the chair, and I think the rope breaks or he doesn't die, and that's generally the gist of it, right? But the way I have listened to it, interpreted it as, is that Knots is all about this guy thinking about killing himself because he's in this, horrible World War II situation. And then the next song, the next song, Roses, is sort of like the half second between him stepping off the chair and the rope breaking, or him no longer noosing himself, right? And it's all about roses and don't let my woes drag you down. So it almost feels like that split second where he's thinking about, oh, what have I done? Should I have done it? The song's, again, this mid-ground between like a soft song and like a really fast, upbeat rap. Again, it's one of the more beautiful ones, like Yes, Britannia, and Talking to Myself more relevantly. And that's really just goes to show you how well these songs flow into each other, right? That this whole song not only is encompassed by just like a few milliseconds, but also like flows from one into the next quite well, like in the song itself. Like the tail end of Knots is the beginning of Roses, and the tail end of Roses is the beginning of Theories. So I'm not great at interpreting music for whatever stories behind them, but that's sort of how I'm perceiving these songs. The song of its own merit is a great song. It's really touching, and it's really an enjoyable listen. The song after that is Theories, and again, Theories is one of those songs that for me just doesn't get a whole heap of airplay. Not because it's a bad song or anything, but it just, I feel like, is undershadowed by some of the other ones. The other thing that you need to know about Watsky is that all of his music has double meanings, right? It's almost like an episode of like any, I want to say sitcom, right? Where you got A and B plots. You got plot A is Lisa and Homer are stealing from a museum, and Bart's trying to teach his mum to dance, right? I haven't watched The Simpsons in years, but just go with it, right? You've got A plot, Lisa and Homer. That's the main plot of the episode, right? They're stealing from a museum, whatever. I think that's vaguely a episode. And then the B plot is Bart and Marge. And it's not as important, but it's still something going on. So think of that when you're listening to Watsky's music. You've got this one overarching story of Arthur and the whole World War II suicide thing going on. And then underneath, you've got this, sort of sub-story going on. And I'll be completely honest, I haven't listened to it enough to really be able to say efficiently what is going on. But there is, talks about him and talks about his father throughout that song. It's soft, it's soft, quiet. I think that really works in music, especially his music. But for some reason, this song really doesn't catch me. And it's probably to my loss, honestly, because I'm sure there's some like great lyrical stuff going on. But again, when you've got things like Brave New World, Love Letters, Tiny Glowing Screens Part 3, it's easy for something like Theories, which is a great song, again, of its own right, just to get forgotten almost. Yeah, lots of stuff in there about him and his dad. And then we finally move on to 18, last long album, Exquisite Corpse. I don't like this song. I think every album has a worst song. I think this is the worst song. However, unlike, is it Good Guy or Nice Guy? Good Guy from Eminem's album that I was talking about recently, I don't think Exquisite Corpse is a bad song. I just think it's the worst on the album. It's still like it's a decent song, but I just don't like it. And you know what? I think that's fine. Everyone has like songs that they don't like, and this is one for me. It starts off with Watsky, and I believe it also ends with Watsky. That's how little I've listened to it. But it starts and ends with him, and there's like a whole bunch of different rappers, because it's quite a long song. It's like 10 minutes, sort of coming in and out and doing verses. And I think the overall plot is, because it's it's almost like an episode of a TV show rather than a song. It's so long. But I think the overall story is that it's like post-apocalyptic, and very few people just trying to get by in this post-apocalyptic, like Mad Max type world. And if you've watched the music video, which I have like once, it sort of helps to understand this picture that it's painting. But yeah, it's just a weird one. I don't necessarily dislike any of the rappers that are on there, because there's like a whole bunch of them. None of the rappers individually are bad. I don't think together they're bad. I just don't really like the song. And it's not even like not catchy. I think it's just lyrically, it just sort of bores me. And maybe that just is because, like me, I hate why am I saying poke? I've got Pokemon on the brain too much. Post-apocalyptic, right? I hate it. I think it's so boring as like a book or a TV show trope. I'm so sick of saying like, oh, what's your post-apocalyptic movie of the day? Is it alien apocalypse, or is it technology apocalypse? Oh, hey, maybe it's zombies, or maybe it's like Mad Max, there's nothing left, or maybe it's like, there's like 3 people left and the rest of the universe is just empty, right? I find it so boring. And that's just like a me personal thing. But, and you know what? That's probably why I dislike the song. Because again, the beat is pretty catchy, and the rappers individually all quite good. After some deliberating, that is why I don't like it. It's because of the lyrical content, which for me is a major part of why I like or dislike a song/artist. The lyrics themselves. Which is why, a lot of the rappers and like pop rappers that you hear on the radio, I probably don't like. Not because I dislike their talent, but just because, like, lyrically, if nothing is going on, if it's very vapid lyrically, I'm not that interested. Whereas if there's a lot being told with the lyrics, I like it, which is why I like rap, and which is why I dislike pop. And, pop is easily something that's easier to listen to and more accessible to a larger amount of people on a more general basis. But we're talking about personal preference here, and my personal preference is not pop and not Exquisite Corpse, because it's post-apocalyptic, not my thing. Even though, as the year goes by, we should probably think about the apocalypse more and more, because I've seen some real scary things, the least of which not being the fact that I've seen a robot parkouring over, like, furniture and stuff. It was, I don't know if you've seen it, I'll link it. Oh, please remember to link it. A video of, like, the robot that's, like, parkouring. It's real scary. And if Japan's developing any of these things, just remember that I buy more Pokemon and Japanese things than anything else. So if it's ever like Japan versus the world, just remember whose side I'm on. Anyway, with that real lovely, almost treasonous note, I think we'll end the episode. Next time, I'll probably talk about maybe a Spo's album, because he's another great rapper. I don't know. The more I do this, I just want to talk about, like, artists that are lesser known, but basically twofold. I want to inform the listener on new artists that they might like, and also if this ever gets to a point where people are listening to this more than the individual artists, that I can say, hey, go show some love. But at this point, it's very much like, hey, if you've never heard of Spose or Watsky or Eminem, go and check it out. Anyway, that's me done. I've stood in this small closet for long enough. Have a good one. Don't text and drive, and I'll be back next time.